Willkommen zurück.
Welcome back. I hope you had good conversations during the break and you at home have made yourself comfortable again. In the first part, we talked about the challenges of the global food system and learned about the Encouraging Solutions initiative from sub-Saharan Africa. But there are also challenges here in Switzerland. Loss of biodiversity, effects of climate change or food waste are just a few examples. Almost everyone agrees that action is needed, but how? There is no agreement on that. Political blockades prevent the further development of the Swiss food system. The federal government's agriculture policy 22+ has been suspended, and when it comes to votes on agriculture policy, society is deeply divided. The discussion needs new momentum. This is exactly the thing of impetus Biovision wants to provide. Personally, I'm quite proud that we at Biovision have held Switzerland's first National Citizens' Assembly of Women and Men Citizens. Gabriel Peloquin, he is the project coordinator for the Citizens' Assembly for Food Policy, knows what the Citizens' Assembly is all about. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Imagine you just come out of a shop, coffee shop, hairdressers, and somebody approaches you. A person from Demoscope, Social Market Research Institute. This person is talking to you because a random generator has chosen your postal code. Now that person asks you whether you'd be interested in participating in a citizen assembly on food policy. This means for 6 months you are to participate in several meetings with other people, also chosen at random, and inform yourself and develop recommendations. Maybe you're not sure, you take the leaflet, you go home, check the website, sleep on it. Is this a serious thing that you've been offered? And then you have to answer the question, do I participate or don't I? Let's assume you say yes. Then on the 11th and 12th of June of this year, you go to the starting weekend of the Citizens' Assembly. You wonder, how does this work? What are we doing here? You meet 79 other people who have just as many questions. This group is a cross-section of society. It was chosen so as to replicate Switzerland with regard to age, gender, educational attainment, political attitude, linguistic region, and residential location. So you see that people are quite different from you. People in the room are not you. That's what happened with the Citizens' Assembly for Food Policy. A group of people chosen at random met to work on food policy. People from all residential locations in Switzerland. Here you can see where the people came from. Together, from June to the beginning of November, they worked on recommendations. They dealt with food policy. Now you might wonder, well, what's the advantage of choosing people at random? Well, first, the people who participated participated as citizens, as inhabitants of Switzerland. They may not really have been specialists in the field, and if they did, it was at random. They weren't really interested, and they didn't have any agenda on the issue. They didn't want to be re-elected. In the center of the debate, there was an exchange of opinions, of people with different life experiences, different backgrounds, an exchange of people who would never have talked to each other otherwise, and who would for sure not have talked about food policy. To be listened and to listen was very important. People came from their social background, where everybody knows each other, where people very often are very similar. And they then discover a group where people are different. The debate was professionally facilitated, and it was a protected space. I can say my opinion, I can listen to other people's opinions, and I can change my opinion. The format, that is very important, didn't have any conditions on what the result ought to be. It was an open result. We didn't tell people what should come out. However, what we had was a question. And the question was, what should a food policy for Switzerland look like if it is to deliver healthy, sustainable, animal-friendly and fairly produced food for all until 2030? With regard to the questions, two aspects are important. First, it's about a holistic approach. It's not about agriculture on the one side and consumption on the other side. These are the issues that are very often debated. It's about the whole picture, about bars and restaurants, about processing of food, about health aspects, and also social aspects, and also about the supply chain. Second aspect, the year 2030 is not something that we just invented because we think 30 sounds nice. It refers to the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, a political goal that Switzerland has already decided that it wants to achieve. So, in the center of this agenda is not the target that is set, it's how do we reach that target. The Citizen Assembly, in this sense, is a measure that helps politicians. It tells us what we achieve or what the result is when people who are chosen at random deal with an issue. Contrary to a survey, they deal with the issue over a longer time and reach a different result. The participants didn't start debating straight away. They first received information. For, as I said before, they are no experts. They don't know everything. It is not a union of experts. It's a citizens' assembly. So people from the field, people from associations, from advocacy groups, and scientists told them about food policy. Here you can see a scientist on the picture. we didn't only have inputs, we also had practical information. We did educational trips. The participants traveled all over Switzerland to different projects, of a great variety of projects. For example, a project in the Jura Mountains, a restaurant in Switzerland that only uses Swiss products, community-supported agriculture projects in the Graubünden Mountains, project in the Ticino, a canton of Ticino that doesn't use irrigation. The participants were really very committed, and over 6 months they have been elaborating recommendations for a future food policy. I'll come back to that later. So that you can get a better picture of how this works, I'll show you a short film. Without reshaping our food system, we can't reach the chains for sustainable development. For me, the process of the Citizens' Assembly was a very interesting journey. I started in June, I came to Alton, I didn't know what to expect. I realized it's a big, complex, diverse issue. And then we continued, we went to different projects. We wanted to mainly work on the social issue. We wanted to see how we can integrate social issues in a healthy manner. In the beginning, it was really complex. We didn't really know how to proceed, but we had great facilitators. It was really interesting. And there was a lot of enthusiasm and energy. And we had new ideas. It was also possible to change one's opinion, and without any problem. I understood, or I learned rather, that good ideas are not enough. You have to overcome challenges on the political, economic, social level that you have to take into account if you want to make sustainability a reality. We are now at the final weekend of the Citizens' Assembly. We are going to present and vote on our recommendations. My favorite recommendation is information. It's information on food and nutrition. It begins at a very young age. You can't let families and schools do all the work. You have to go much further. I want politicians in Bern to take us seriously. I think that was going to be the biggest problem. They have so many things to read, and maybe they don't even look at our recommendations. I really hope that politicians in Bern read what we have worked on.
Ja, Gabriel, das klingt total spannend und innovativ, was ihr da gemacht habt. Aber jetzt mal ehrlich.
Yes, Gabriel, that all sounds very innovative and exciting, but let's be honest now. The Citizens' Assembly for Food Policy was organized by Biovision Agriculture with a Future and SDSN Switzerland. These organizations have an overtly green stance on food policy. How did you ensure independence?
You're absolutely right. These are the three organizations who organized the project. However, such a big project is not something that you do alone. We had different institutional partners. Demoscope, I already mentioned them in the beginning. They did our recruitment. And the recruitment is quite a lot of work. And Collaboratio Helvetica prepared, planned, and did the meetings. They facilitated the meetings. Moreover, we had an advisory board, a scientific advisory board with leading scientists in food policy. They gave information to the participants. in order to ensure the exchange. We also collaborated with 3 federal offices: the Federal Office of Agriculture, the Federal Office for Food Security and Veterinary Aspects, and the Federal Office of the Environment. And as I said, we also invited advocacy groups, not only production and consumption, but representatives of advocacy groups from the whole food policy spectrum. Last but not least, then I've finished our logo tapestry here. We had people who really did a kind of checking of how we were organized, if really we fulfill a scientific standard with our citizens' assembly. And as I said, we didn't have any conditions with regard to result, and we didn't participate or vote, we as an organization. We had a certain distance. The results of the Citizens' Assembly are from the participants. And in that sense, the participants are the heart of the project.
Exactly. You're talking about the heart of the Citizens' Assembly, the participants. They have spent 6 months working intensively, and now we would like to hear from them personally how they experienced in the Citizens' Assembly. Sven Boss and Gardenia Ahmed are with us today on behalf of the participants. Join me on stage. Welcome.
Hallo Gardenia, hoi Sven.
Hello Gardenia, hello Sven. I'm happy that you're here today to tell us about the Citizen Assembly. Perhaps the question to you, Sven, how did you come to participate in the project?
That was quite simple. I went shopping in my village and somebody approached me. And he said, we have a Citizens Assembly. I knew that from France. I thought, oh, I'd like to participate. I've been living in Switzerland for 8 years and I cannot vote. And to be able to influence the future of my daughter, for me, was a great thing.
Exactly. You come from this area, right?
What was really funny was I didn't understand that it was about food policy. And I actually have been working on tropical agricultural systems and exactly what Biovision is working on. And then when I discovered that was the very issue, and that was perfect for me, and I really had to participate.
So, Gardenia, how was it with you?
Quite similar. I went shopping when somebody from Demoskop asked me if I want to participate in a Citizens' Assembly on sustainable voting. I'm not very active. I do vote. I'm part of a parents' assembly, but I'm not really politically active. But I was motivated for a new experience and for doing something that makes me feel less powerless. And I thought that maybe I could change things by participating.
And was it worth participating?
Absolutely. I was really enthusiastic. However, it was much more work than I had imagined. It wasn't only the meetings. In addition to that, I did research. I talked to people in my private environment and then gathered new ideas.
And that's what makes it really interesting, right? Yes, I would like to give you a little bit of time so that you can tell about your experiences. Yeah, you have the floor.
Yes, the initial starting weekend was on the 11th and 12th of June, as was already mentioned before. It was a bit strange to come into a group where you don't know anybody. However, in the end, it was worth it. We were distributed in working groups at random. and I met at the table. First, we got to know each other, where we come from, who we are. That's what we kind of exchanged about. Then there were presentations of different stakeholders. I was quite surprised and pleasantly surprised that Switzerland is a grass land because we have a lot of regions where we can only grow grass. And a few months before, I had tried to go vegan, and I really missed milk, dairy products, milk and cheese. Before the first debate, we were told what the guidelines are. Every participant had to shortly outline his point of view before and after the debate. This helped to integrate everybody and to also integrate all the opinions into the debate. After the initial weekend, we met 3 times online in Zoom meetings. We, that is the 8 people of our group, plus 2 facilitators. So we had support in the debate and also with our Zoom problems. It all went quite well. We could also ask questions to experts that were then answered until the next meeting. What was difficult was that I was in the production, a working group on production, and it was really difficult to limit problems to the issue of production because the food system is so complex that if you change something in the sector of production, then things also change for the consumer. But we had to concentrate on production. After the online meetings, we had a summer break and we could participate in learning trips, educational trips. I went to 2 farms and there talked to the farmers there. One of them was the Käsgartenhof in Basel-Land, and they only use food that they grow on the farm. They also have chicken and produces their own barley for the chicken. And they also have a few pigs, but mainly cattle. I was quite surprised to learn that the chicken are so highly bred that the farmer needs a specific feed for the chicken, because if he doesn't use it, they'll peck each other. And so he brings the barley to the mill so that they mix a special feed mixture to have calm in the chicken shed. And also he has a problem with the spotted wing Drosophila, and the farmer uses insecticides to secure the harvest. I was quite surprised that the farmer is not allowed to set his own price for the cherries that he sells in his farm shop. The price is set by the trader who buys the bulk of his cherries. It shows how much power the big retailers have. If his cattle has a few kilograms too little or too much, he gets much less per kilogram. That also was quite surprising for me. The farmers and the families that support them are very committed. After the educational trips, we had 2 further online meetings, and now that we knew about the problems, we had to concentrate on the issues that we thought were important, and we did already work on recommendations. And that brought us to the exchange meeting in Lausanne that Sven is going to present to you. As you can see, we did have a big debate. The meeting in Lausanne felt like a family reunion. We knew that what we did was right. We were inspired. And there was such a lot of information in the room. We also exchanged on what we had learned in the educational trips. I also went to 2 very lovely farms. One was community-supported agriculture in the mountains. The farmer produced so many things, but didn't really have time to sell things. And consumers in the city said, we'd like to have these products, this produce. And it is a win-win situation if both of them collaborate. It was a very interesting example, because the farmer cannot organize everything. He needs the consumers to help. This farmer is currently handing over the farm. And the father actually said that, well, what you're doing, son, isn't really real agriculture. And I was surprised, because if you produce something, that's agriculture. And the second example was in the canton of Fribourg. It's a farmer who produces different kinds of fruit. And he said that his neighbors also say that what you do isn't real farming. And so there are 2 kinds of farmers. And I didn't realize that that kind of division exists. After the educational trip, we had a wonderful process. I'm really proud of what we did. We actually, how could I put that? The intelligence of different people was brought together.
Herzlichen Dank euch beiden. Das war sehr spannend, was ihr erzählt habt.
Thank you very much to you both. That was really thrilling to hear what you now told. And actually, the final weekend also took place, and you have voted on the recommendations. Now, I would like to know, what are these recommendations by the Citizens' Assembly, Gabriel? All in all, we have 126 recommendations which were adopted. This shows how much energy was there, how much ideas the citizens created in their assembly. Of course, we cannot show all the 126 recommendations, and I cannot summarize them, but maybe you two, Sven and Gardenia, you could probably tell us 1 or 2 of the recommendations, or an area of recommendations which is very important to you.
All working groups actually found that we need more information for the consumers, and that children should learn at school about food, so that they grow up with more knowledge and take the right decisions. For me, 2 issues were really important. First, we should reward producers that produce something that we all need and then are in financial distress. And we developed or elaborated recommendations for that. Second, we have too much meat and too many animal products. And how can we change that? We need to import less feed, animal feed, and produce less fertilizer. We have to produce food for humans and not food for animals. Yeah, that's the measures we worked on.
Well, I think that shows how broad those recommendations were. from education till the inclusion of producers and pesticides and fertilizers. Was there something that actually surprised you, one of the recommendations that was adopted or was rejected, and you thought, no, it can't be rejected or so?
We had a vote on a kind of cooperative where each Swiss person can pay a contribution and gets sustainable food out of that. The group working on social issues put a lot of energy into that, but it was rejected in the end. Yes, and the second thing was that the debate on genetic engineering still is a difficult debate. It was about 50-50. Some people thought it was a potential. Others thought, no, we mustn't do that. That was surprising.
Yes, I would like to continue to talk a long time about these recommendations. Really important and interesting what you said. You said 126 recommendations were adopted. What happens with them now, Gabriel?
Of course, the recommendations are not the end of the process or the debate. Rather, it's to be an impetus. And very concretely, next Thursday, on the 29th of November, we'll have an exchange in Bern with members of the parliament, of the Swiss parliament. And the participants are going to hand over the recommendations and start a debate. And of course, we hope that the political debate is going to continue after that. Next February, on the 2nd of February, there will be a food summit, and it's a one-day event where the Federal Councillor Guy Parmelin is going to receive the recommendations. And of course, we also hope for a very fruitful debate then.
All right, the Citizens' Assembly should not compete with the established political establishment, but it should be just seen as something to continue the discussion. Somebody who has been fighting in the established political system for many years for sustainable food systems is Maya Graf. She is also member of the foundation circle of Biovision, and she is a member of the Council of States of Switzerland, the organic farmer Maya Graf. Yes, thank you very much, and also thank you very much for the presentation. It's really impressive to hear and see what has happened, and I'm looking forward to welcome these recommendations already next Tuesday. However, I tell you, it'll be quite difficult to have all the recommendations included in our political world. But the most important thing that I would like to share with you is it's not a coincidence also that it's not a coincidence that you both were elected to join the Citizens' Assembly. The recommendations of the Citizens' Assembly for food production is really coming at the right point in time. And you heard already, we are now at the time where the agrarian policy, looking into the future, has come to a blockade. And you heard that the Agrarian Policy 22 Plus should have been discussed by the members of parliament already 2 years ago. And this year, both councils, the Council of States and the National Council, stopped the process. They didn't want to discuss it. For the right-wing circles, it was too much of sustainability and too progressive. It was too fast for them. And the Association of Farmers was strongly against the fact that this should be discussed. And the farmers have still a great power in the Swiss parliament. So the agricultural policy was stopped. There was a motion, and the government was asked to work out a future perspective for the coming decades. And the postulate, which is a non-binding motion, was that trade and consumption was included, because before the agrarian policy 22 plus did not include import and the consumption. As you know, 50% of our food products are imported, and that was also a big issue within the Citizens' Assembly. And it was clear that one has to include the full supply chain. And such kind of a report has to be worked out now by the government. The government and all the federal offices started to work, and you were able to read it in the media in the summer. June 23, it was just brief before the Citizens' Assembly met for the first time. The government issued a comprehensive report on the future of the agrarian policy of Switzerland. The report shows that in future, the sustainable agriculture in Switzerland has to contribute at a greater deal for the sustainability of economy and agriculture, and that leads to include consumption as well. The whole policy should be implemented in 3 phases. Now, again, it's Parliament to work on the report, and December 13 in the Council of the States, we will discuss both the agricultural policy 22 plus in a reframed mode, and in a first phase, we are also going to deal with the proposal that we will have checks and balances for the year 2025-2026, which would include a further our focus on the overall comprehensive food system. And their sustainable consumption should be an issue. That means that consumers should know the ways of production of their foodstuff, as well as the impact on the animal welfare and on climate. These are exactly the issues that you were also dealing with in the Citizens' Assembly. And of course, this is good as far as it goes. And the Commission for Economy and Fees of the Council of States also proposes a motion as to this issue, including the report on future direction of the agricultural policy of Switzerland. And it also mandates the Swiss government to reduce the ecological footprint in the agricultural production up to the consumption of food, and including the effect of imports, which is also what the Citizens' Assembly claims and what I myself also try to include in our political world. In other words, that we have to find solutions together. The big problem is, and now this is where your recommendations come into play, it just takes too long. This first step should actually be discussed in the next agricultural reforms, and that takes place only in the year 2033. And I think we do not have to discuss that. This is much too late. We have to do it until 2030 because we have also international responsibility, and we need to solve the problem economically, socially, and also ecologically, because the problems are so urgent. That means, in other words, the Citizens' Assembly's recommendations have to be included in everyday policies and have to shape the speed which we need to be able to implement these recommendations. I'm very happy with them. at least those that I were already able to see. And once the majority can see the proposals and the recommendations, I think they may surprise the people, but I think we can find majorities to support these recommendations. Sometimes the agricultural assemblies and associations thought it's too green, the solutions, but it nevertheless seems that the citizens have done good job with a lot of knowledge and insight and know-how, and that's why you came up with good feasible recommendations, neither left nor right, neither urban or rural, but serving the purpose to finding good, concrete, impacting solutions together with the consumers and together with the citizens. I keep telling to delete the word consumers because we buy every day as citizens everywhere, and we carry responsibility as citizens. If I consume something, I need something, and I buy something. And it's not good to say I'm not interested what happened before and what happens afterwards. And this is why I think the slogan, and I repeat, just to show you the slide as from before, this is what my slogan has always been, and it's my job to put it into policy and implement it there. So the way we eat, that's the way the world looks like. And we just have to frame the good conditions to do so, and that it's possible for everyone, not only in Switzerland, but also the citizens of foreign countries. As I said to you, 50% of our food production for products are imported, and this is why we shape the world outside of our borders, and I'm just thinking of climate change as well. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward for a very constructive future as to the Citizens Assembly's recommendation.
Herzlichen Dank, Maya.
A great thank you to you, Maya. And I always wanted to say thank you to Gardenia and Sven for your insights into the first Citizens' Assembly on Food Policy in Switzerland. The Citizens' Assembly, the impressive work of Seoul's Food and Healthy Community in Kenya, have shown us that we can achieve something despite the difficult situation if we join forces. Together with you, we'll continue to do just that. And if you support Biovision, you get things moving. And I'd really like to thank you from my heart for doing just that. However, we are not at the very end yet. First, I'd like to ask somebody to the podium who has been moving things and has changed things fundamentally in the past decades, and he's still very active. The president of our Foundation Council, Hans Rudolf Herren. You have the floor.
Hoi Hans.
Hello, Hans. Wonderful you're here. I'm happy to be here again, says Hans. It seems not too long ago, but it's true, we can't see you every day. Yes, it's wonderful to be here again and to see so many people. Thank you very much for coming out and that you support Biovision also on my own profiles. You are one of the founding fathers of the movement of sustainable food systems. Where do we stay today? Where are we? Well, it's wonderful to see that we now talk about the food system and not only about agricultural production systems. So this is much more comprehensive and holistic, and that's very important. It's easy to speak when you come from a specialty, and then you just focus on this one particular specialty and ignore that on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side, many other things happen. So what you do yourselves always has an impact, far beyond of what we usually think of or can see in the future. And food, nutrition has, of course, become a very big issue in the discussion of climate, for example. Yes, you're right, and it was already mentioned here today. The agriculture, the food system, the way we have shaped it so far, is actually also very much in the responsibility, because 30% of our climate problems could be solved, but is not solved. And we know that for a very long time. So that's why we try to change our consumption patterns and our ways of production food. I think we need several crises more to make this really understand. And we talk that easily about sustainability. And now we have to talk about resilience, looking at the amount of problems that are ahead of us. And I think you have seen that today as well. Looking at the examples that were presented to us, resilience is the thing that we try to achieve, not only sustainability. You talk about food and nutrition as a whole system. It's not only agriculture. That's what we heard today. That means the project. What does it mean for the project in sub-Saharan Africa? Well, again, there we have to reframe our thinking. And that's a challenge. Because if you don't see the whole system, then you create a lot of problems. We have to do system thinking. And already 50 years ago, we started to the systems approach. And many people just laughed at us. Also, the authors of The Limits to Growth talked about that. And it was exactly 50 years ago today, which said that technology is the ultimate goal to solve all problems. And now we understand what it was meant with that. And we have seen where technology has its limits. And now we really have to think along the systemic line of thoughts and how to solve our problems with this kind of thinking. Yes, in Africa we have to consider the market, right? That's true. The food system is not only production, as we heard, but it's also marketing, handling, up to consumption. And as Biovision, we also implemented and improved the production first. Then we started to teach and train the people in the sense of agroecology. But we did not do too much about the whole marketing. And if the farmers farm ecologically, they need to have a good market to go to. And this is why we increasingly focus on this issue now. Unless we don't do it, the farmers are there, produce great foodstuff, but have no market. And we need to increase our investment. And the farmers also would invest more if they know that they have a good marketing of their products. Let's back to you. In your career as a scientist up to the political human being and also working and growing the Biovision political team, what was the impact of you? Well, you have seen the good results. You had a lot of evidence, but this evidence is not now implemented in policy. And it's very hard to influence policy, even as a scientist and as know-how. The farmers have a lot of know-how, and know-how creates knowledge and should actually be included into the political world. And I myself experienced that as well. I saw that we had great results. We had a great success with our science. We had a lot of implementation of our results, but the political world did just not accept it. Why? Because the counter pressure was very strong, because we wanted to change something. We wanted a system that renews itself, where you don't have to buy a lot of materials such as pesticides, fertilizers, and so on. And of course, there's a lot of counter pressure to that. However, we have been successful in the last years, and now you start talking very much about the transformation of the systems, and that would lead into the direction of big policies interests. They are still against us, and that's why we feel this counter pressure from big politics. And that's why I'm still here, and I still continue to deal with the best I can with the political world, so that they understand what the farmer needs, what the consumer needs, and not that the people in Basel and in other pharmaceutical cities will just make everything to make their profits grow. Exactly. We talked about the fact that Biovision is also very committed in the work here in Switzerland. Why? Well, I think it's very good that finally Switzerland's also talking about ecology, and in particular when we talk about the citizens' assembly, that's wonderful. That's exactly the way when you can change something. And I told Oliver, I can go anywhere with my head of Biovision and Hans-Rudi Herren, and I can tell a long time, do agroecology, but when they respond to me about what do you do at home? But now we can proudly say we have good examples back here at home, and we can go out and share our good examples and say to other countries that we can do something in our own country of the north. But this goes one step beyond. You have to do yourself something. You have to tackle something. You have to transform yourself, and you can do something. You know, the farmer also says, I'm doing what I preach. I have a small ecological farming, agricultural farm, and I know how difficult it is, and I know that at the beginning you don't make a lot of money, if at all, but it shows that experience helps, teaching helps, and also with the good networking it helps. And then you can fight against these winds that are against you. And I can tell from my own experience, this all is possible. You can try another way against the big businesses' interests. We walk the talk. That's what you do, Hans-Heiri, yes. If you had a wish for something for the food system of the future, what would that wish be? Well, it could be critical, but we are still at it, and Biovision continues. I think we have really received an impetus, a good momentum to go on. We have found good avenues to change the systems from top to bottom and from bottom to top. And we at Biovision, we are in a world that is constantly changing. We have to adapt, and that's what we do. We continue, but also always due to your great support, dear participants here, and I hope that it continues. And we welcome your comments, of course, even if they are critical. We always like to hear what you think, whether we are on the right track. And I hope to meet you all again here very soon. Thank you very much, Hans-Rudolf Herren, for your contribution today.
I don't know about you, but I'm really motivated every time I hear Hans-Rudolf Herren talk. At the same time, I wonder what I, as an individual person, can really contribute to a change. The good thing is that we can change things. Maya Graf just told us that. Goodbye to everybody. Thank you for being here and listening.